Huffington Post. We've just gotten finished watching tonight's debate in the most romantic city in the universe, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm Jason Linkins, editor of Eat the Press of the Huffington Post. I'm joined on this exclusive Huffington Post debate night live stream by the internet's girlfriend, Lauren Weber, and the internet's shady boyfriend, Zach Carter.
All I do is talk to you about banking policy on date night.
Every time.
That's right. We are going to get right into it. And I think, though, before we get into winners and losers among the debate candidates, we need to talk about the people who were under the most scrutiny tonight, the debate moderators. Tonight, the debate was on Fox Business Channel. It's a direct competitor with CNBC, the pro-free market capitalist temple gurus that somehow managed to run afoul of the entire Republican Party.
Who were completely eviscerated in the press.
Yes. So tonight, Fox Business
and I think
Network.
unfairly, I will say they were eviscerated in the press. They asked tough questions, CNBC did in the last debate. So I just want to throw it out there that I think mostly was a lot of crybaby whining from the Republican candidates that resulted in that reputation. But tonight we had the Fox Business Channel, which is supposed to be like the B-teamer, like also rans to CNBC. CNBC gets much better ratings. It has a just much longer track record of success as a business channel on cable news. And I thought their people did a pretty good job tonight.
I thought this was the most substantive debate so far. Would you not say?
I would agree. Now, I will say that
actual policy
out there on Twitter, there were moments that got real mixed reviews, but I felt tonight Neil Cavuto came out and he took a real steady, firm hand on the rudder. He asked questions.
He was a little slow.
Okay, yeah, it was a little slow, but the patience paid off. It was like, I feel like Neil came out, was patient with the way he asked his questions. He was precise. He made sure that the questions were well articulated. His first question actually brought in the Fight for 15 protests going on.
It's true.
It's amazing. It's amazing that they got a moment in the spotlight tonight on Fox Business Channel, and it became the fulcrum of the first round of questions. It was quite good.
You could tell throughout the debate that Fox Business was coming from a significantly right of center perspective with everything, but the questions were still substantive. I mean, the Republican Party comes at everything from a significantly right of center perspective. And so getting, conservative questions from people is not necessarily bad if they're the right questions that require the candidates to sort of tease out their policy positions and draw contrasts with each other.
I mean, and even so, they did talk about climate change. They did ask Marco Rubio, when Hillary Clinton has so many more years of experience on him, how can he hope to go against her? I mean, they had some solid kind of variety in their questions, even so.
After the CNBC debate, Tim Carney wrote a piece talking a little bit about media bias and framing it differently. He talked about how conservatives, when they receive debate questions in a frame that's not conservative, when it doesn't actually, I would say, sort of like bring out their point of view on things. I don't mean it favors them, but if you're not speaking like the right language, things can go awry. And I think that's what happened in the CNBC debate. This sort of framing of the question, the way the pitch came over the plate, it felt a little bit mean-minded tonight. I feel like they asked tough questions, but they still sort of asked questions that were within these guys' wheelhouse and brought out some pretty good answers. I was really impressed. One of the things where we could knock CNBC for definitely was when they asked questions in their debate, there was a lot of loosey-goosey sourcing. They didn't quite know what they were doing.
And they didn't stand up for their sourcing.
Right. And remember in the last debate, Becky Quick asked the question about
I'm sorry, what?
Donald Trump slagging Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Donald Trump said, no, I never said that. And she was like, okay, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. She didn't make a mistake. It was right there on Donald Trump's website.
Yeah.
Donald Trump lied.
But tonight...
And there were a lot of lies that they got away with last time. Tonight... Yeah, Maria Bartiromo said, we're going to come to the debate knowing the holes in your tax plans. And I felt like they did.
I think they did. I mean, I think the candidates still got away with saying a lot of things.
They did, of course.
That just made no sense at all.
It's a welter of nonsense.
There was a long period of time where they were talking about financial policy, for instance, where they were all like, Marco Rubio said, you know what? These big banks, they have too much power. It's a huge problem, so we should repeal Dodd-Frank. which regulates big banks more harshly than other banks. It was totally bonkers, and that's just the answer. I mean, Carly Fiorina kept talking about crony capitalism. Other people on stage were talking about crony capitalism, and yet you hear over and over again, we really need to be nicer to the oil and gas industry. Fracking has been such a boon to the American economy. What an American success story.
I mean, and Ben Carson just kept going on and on about making the poor people not poor, but had nothing. I mean, he literally said,
Step one,
making the poor people not poor.
Step one, want to do it. Step two, I don't know.
And then it was like a bunch of convoluted, jumbled things that came after that, and then I kind of fell asleep in the middle of his answer.
Right.
Then I jolted back awake eventually.
Which is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to fall asleep in the middle of his answer, and then wake up and be like, that guy still seems pretty nice.
It's like being under anesthesia. It's like being under anesthesia.
It sounds to me like we're moving on to the question that everyone wants to ask after debate: who's the winner, who's the loser?
Jason.
Yeah, seriously, we just want to get to the point.
I will say, I felt like tonight's debate, it's really tough to discern who the clear winner, clear loser is. I'll say this just to begin with, and this is probably the easiest thing we can say about tonight's debate. Donald Trump, a guy who didn't want to participate in a 3-hour debate, who didn't participate in any more than like 18 minutes of an hour and a half Saturday Night Live. Tonight, he was spent from the get-go.
He looked
real
tired.
Sleepy, really tired, really low energy. I would say that his fortunes have been on the reverse lately. Nothing in tonight's debate suggests that trend won't continue.
No, I mean, I think tonight's debate really could be the beginning of a serious slump. I mean, he got booed twice.
Yeah.
He got booed for silencing Carly Fiorina.
Yeah.
And he got booed. What was the other?
The immigration exchange.
The immigration exchange. He got booed. I mean,
he got booed trying to take down John Kasich. Essentially.
Yeah.
And he usually does very well on his takedowns. Maneuvers.
And he didn't have his big takedown. He usually starts with a massive takedown at the beginning of the debates. And tonight that was missing. The fire was gone.
Yeah.
He wasn't there.
I will also say that the guy who I thought had the standout performance the last time the Republicans came together, Ted Cruz, had a pretty weak performance. He did not look tired the way Trump did.
5 things he had to talk about.
But he blew a lot of rhetorical moves. I mean, he said he basically rehashed Rick Perry's gigantic fuck up from
literally
the 2012
rehashed
debate.
it.
I mean,
Another Texas guy
he's
going at it.
There are 5. I'm going to cut government spending by cutting these 5 different departments. And then he named 4 and named one of them twice.
The Department of
Commerce.
Department of Commerce. Which
He wants to cut them twice.
Which is a lousy department as they go.
We totally should cut that second Department of Commerce.
Yeah, that sounds like it's a little bit redundant to have 2 of them, you know? I totally understand that.
There's just no good reason for us to have 2 Departments of Commerce.
Why would you need 2?
But it was just amazing that he decided, I'm gonna rehash this Rick Perry talking point, and I'm gonna fuck it up the same way he did.
I don't want to get the
Even
copy.
worse, because there's 5.
I don't want to get the copy editors up my back on this. Is it Departments of Commerce or Department of Commerces?
I don't even want to know.
It's like
think it's
attorneys
probably the
general.
first
And
one,
also,
right?
I mean,
pretty
and
sure.
Ted Cruz is supposed to be the master debater. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say later in the evening, I mean, he did a good job not looking like he had just totally flubbed something. But when he was talking about how terrible Hillary Clinton was, he said at one point, everything she's put her hand to is touched.
Yeah.
it's kind of like
He
Midas,
has a
you know?
point.
I don't
He
know.
has a point.
I mean,
Everything
true.
she puts her hand to is touched. I think he's right. PolitiFact is going to come back true on that one.
No Pinocchios.
What do you think about? We want to talk about a little bit about Carly Fiorina because Carly Fiorina has been popping in these debates. She's been doing good, getting a lot of attention. I know it's gonna pain you to say this, for me to say this.
It's gonna pain him a
but
lot.
she's pulled off the HP history revision. You'll note tonight she confidently answered questions and spoke of her own business acumen, knowing that everyone in the room has learned it's fruitless to challenge her on HP. They've taken that shot, they missed, we move on. But Fiorina's problem is that while she presents herself well, she gets the cover of the book right, she hasn't yet opened the book and shown what's on the pages. Did she do any of that tonight?
I mean, she came out and said that like Dodd-Frank was crony capitalism and that the tax code should be 3 pages long. I mean, to me, these are crazy things that don't make any sense. And yet she says them every time. And when she says crazy things that don't make any sense, she does well, right? I mean,
She gets applause.
Her biggest
But
moment.
That's the thing. She's not doing well.
Her polling numbers, though, aren't
She tends to
reflecting that.
pop after a debate in the polls, and then regresses back toward the mean.
I wonder what's going on with that because other candidates say things that are transparently false in their debates. They get disproven by the media after the debates. I mean, when Ben Carson said at the last debate that he was he had, it's just total propaganda that he was a spokesperson for Manatech, this total like scam artist company, which it was not propaganda. He was a spokesperson for that company. He didn't pay any price whatsoever. When Fiorina, made that ridiculous statement about Planned Parenthood videos, she did pay a price. I don't really know what's going on there. I don't know why Republican voters are punishing her more so than others. I don't think she's a particularly appealing candidate. I mean, you know that my view on her forever has been that she is one of the worst corporate executives of the past 3 decades. I can't believe anyone would take her seriously for president. So I don't know why her poll numbers would go up in the first place. It makes it very difficult for me to explain why they would go down.
I mean, the only winning line she had tonight was when she name-checked all of the foreign leaders that she's, not been in a green room with.
Yes, and this was honestly a sort of, she repeated some of the monologues in words and performance of past debates. At some point, that becomes shtick. At some point,
I think
we're going to start tuning that out.
I think it has become shtick because her polling numbers haven't gone up.
Maybe as the audience, as these debates grows and more people engage, we could see those numbers grow up.
Maybe.
We're going to be back in just 1 minute. Take a break. We will be right back.
Welcome back to the Huffington Post. I'm Zach Carter. Joining me now, I have Jason Linkins, editor of Eat the Press, and Sam Lachman. You're an editor extraordinaire, right? That's the right title?
Editor extraordinaire is pretty good.
Yeah.
Another flattering adjective, whatever you want to use.
Senior editor extraordinaire of excellence, Sam Lachman.
Senior dual citizen.
Actually a reporter, but senior dual citizen.
Whatever.
That's pretty good. There's no one else has that title.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Sam's desk is several away from mine, so it's hard to keep track of everybody's titles when they're that far away. So Sam, let's get to it. Who won tonight?
Who won tonight? Are we talking about in general or for their specific constituency?
What is the definition of won?
That's a good question.
It's a troubling thing. Which one of those questions would you like to answer?
Well, I feel like for Rand Paul, he sort of reestablished things that he believes that he hasn't really gotten a platform to say
Yeah, that's totally
yet.
true, yeah.
So she's sort of accomplished what he specifically needed to do. Well, I wouldn't say that's like an objective win for the entire field. In that case, you would say probably Marco Rubio, who just like had a continually strong night, seemed to be bigger than the rest of the field, wanted to...
Very interesting.
Yeah,
I did not feel that way, but it's...
You didn't feel that way?
No, but you go ahead.
Well, he had the point about the child care tax credit where he defended that and said, we actually want to help families who are struggling with very high costs of child care, which would resonate with a lot of people who are going to vote in a general election. But he also still sort of seemed to be approachable and not scary and wasn't yelling. So I don't know. I felt like it was pretty solid for him.
It was interesting because I feel like Rand Paul tacked back to the classic Rand stuff.
Yeah.
And it's going to be of no use to him. It's going to be of no use to him. I think that this was his line drawn in the sand moment, his save face moment, his get back to where he belongs moment. He talked about how good he was at filibustering.
Yeah.
I feel like Rand Paul has sort of like begun to understand that he's tilting toward the exit, and so it's good to see him recapture a bit of the old stuff. And for a brief couple of moments, thanks to Rand Paul, an actual debate between the candidates almost threatened to break out. I'd say the other guy in that situation is Kasich, the guy on the stage that liberals love because he sounds so liberal at times. Yeah. He's really pulled off this scam. He's really pulled off this scam.
It's an amazing scam.
It's an amazing feat. He's as right wing as they come, and he's convinced a lot of people that he's, a moderate on just about every issue.
There was a lot of times where I was shocked that Kasich was saying the things he was saying in a Republican primary. I was
Right.
like, does he know where he is right now?
Right. No, I mean he does. Yeah. He's carrying this flag of being for people who are nostalgic for a time where Republicans were reasonable and not weird lycanthropes.
I felt like the Rand Paul performance was particularly impressive because he sounded like the Rand Paul that everybody kind of flipped out about 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
And then as soon as Rand Paul started running for president, suddenly he stops talking about spending issues. He stops talking about the Fed. And to be clear, I think the things that he says about the Fed are pretty kooky. And he stopped talking about foreign policy, where he is very thoughtful. Even though I disagree with him in a lot of cases, he is far more thoughtful than the just straight up chest-thumping insanity of everybody else on that stage tonight. And he really forced there to be a serious discussion about foreign policy issues tonight, which, I think the moderators did a pretty good job asking tough questions. But if Rand Paul hadn't been there saying, hey guys, seriously? You want to arm the moderate rebels? Who are they? Seriously? You just want to go around bombing everybody all the time? You got to pay for that, if he hadn't been making those points, the Republicans tend to blame the media when the media makes those types of questions. When it's coming from another Republican, it's much more difficult to answer. And I wonder, you say it's too late. I don't think it's too late. I think the field is a total mess beyond the top 2 candidates, and it's not obvious to me that those top 2 candidates are going to stay the top 2 candidates for a long time. Mm-hmm. I think a breakout performance by Rand Paul here could move him into the realm of the Jeb Bushes or the Marco Rubios, where he's at 6, maybe even 7% in the polls.
Well, that would be dare to dream, dare to fly, right?
I don't think that's going to happen.
Right, I don't think so. I don't think so
But
either.
he can dream.
Yeah.
What did y'all think about Carson and Trump? I feel like I forgot at times that Trump was actually there.
Absolutely forgot. We were saying earlier that he sort of went to sleep on us, very low energy.
As he would say.
And
he just was low energy. It was definitely, he was the lowest energy guy on stage, and he was standing next to Ben Carson, who looks like he is going off into like a drug-induced sleep all the time.
Also, the political naivete, which is always starting to showed up a little bit tonight. Mm-hmm. Tonight, Trump closed talking about corporate inversions, and he highlighted the issue, saying this is something that all Republicans and all Democrats agree on. And I was like, you don't win. Donald Trump doesn't win the nomination by saying, I think just like everybody else.
Yeah, and we can
Donald Trump wins the nomination by disparaging everyone to death. A Donald Trump that has an idea that Democrats and Republicans all agree on, not a Donald Trump anyone wants to hear about or hear from. And, to his credit, he's mostly good on corporate tax inversions. Mostly.
We'll talk about the tax plans of these candidates in a minute.
He's not
the
completely
tax plans of these candidates are absolutely outrageous.
Right.
And
did you hear any good ideas tonight?
Look,
I know you're difficult to please.
Yes, I'm hard to please because, as you can see on the Huffington Post, where I've now written 2 stories about all of the Republican tax plans that have been released and analyzed by multiple think tanks, you can see the basic Republican tax strategy is to take. The details are different, but the basic overall strategy is to take the Bush tax cuts and just turn them up to 11. It's a giant deficit-busting plan, regardless of who's presenting it, in which the overwhelming share of the benefits go to the richest people in the country, and then there is a very small pile of money that gets sent out to people who are not the richest people in the country. So Marco Rubio talking about his child tax credit, that sounds very appealing. It's $2,000 for families that aren't going to be getting these $2,000 anyway. So that sounds great. He's also going to be giving away trillions of dollars to the top 1%. So the result of that will either be massive deficits and higher interest rates eventually, or the government being like, wow, geez, we just lost trillions of dollars, we better cut some programs. Well, guess what the government does? The government supports poor people. So when you have to make up for those trillions of dollars, you basically have to cut programs for poor people. So he's pulling some sleight of hand where he's like, I'm going to give you $2,000 with this one, and with the other hand, I'm going to destroy your home. There will be no more affordable housing program.
I loved how his rationale for the child care tax credit, if you didn't know he was talking about that, you could think that he was talking about paid family leave. Right. It was actually pretty amazing, talking about how expensive childcare is. In 35 states, he said something like childcare is more expensive than college, I think he said.
Yeah.
And it sucks for parents to have to take time out of the workforce. It really was like a great
Democrat.
It was a great argument if you didn't know what the specific policy was. So And then you didn't on their tax plans. You didn't really even hear them actually suggesting that it would create more jobs. Like the trickle down economics thing didn't seem to be mentioned. Like no, everyone seems to not actually believe it.
And the problem for the debate audience is that all the Republican plans are so bonkers that the moderators, even if they want to push back at them, they just don't have a whole lot of. I mean, like, what are they going to do? Say like, well, your plan is insane because it would increase the deficit by $6 trillion, but your plan is even crazier because it would increase the deficit by $9 trillion.
It's all relative.
Like, these are just totally wild and bizarre tax plans. And it even got, I mean, Ben Carson had this very strange moment where he was asked by Neil Cavuto, which tax plan does God think is more fair? Your flat tax plan or Donald Trump's plan, which preserves progressive taxation, in which the richest people in the country pay higher tax rates than the poorest people in the country? And Ben Carson comes out and he says, well, I think it's proportional. That's what I like. If you got $10 billion, you pay $1 billion. If you got $10, you pay $1. What could be fairer than that? And then he goes on, after a while meandering, to say, but you know what? I do care about the poor, so there's a rebate for the poor.
Right. The flat tax wasn't entirely flat.
Wasn't a flat tax. So he basically says, Donald Trump's tax plan is more fair than the tax plan that I have been proposing. It was the lack of policy specificity on the financial stuff. I thought was really frustrating.
But does that matter?
And I don't think people care.
What did you think about the immigration row that broke out tonight?
I thought that Jeb Bush's moment on immigration was actually really good for him, with the kind of Republicans who support him, who say that we have to be worried in a general election about what we're saying. They were clapping for him, not thunderously, but there was some.
It was.
Yeah, and
had to have been heartening for him to hear. Oh, you like me? You really like me?
It was like the reason that he was seen to have that advantage on that issue actually came out for him, and I feel like in a way that it hasn't in past debates where he hasn't gotten a chance to assertively say that.
He said it a lot, like Rick Perry did 4 years ago, and they tore Rick Perry to shreds.
Yes.
For Bush to survive that moment, I think a big achievement for him.
It was, definitely, and it was a moment where he actually stood out and he didn't sound too wonky or too defensive or like he was straining to be heard in the debate. Like he actually was saying, it's not realistic for us to deport millions of people, and it's inhumane, and we're going to be separating families.
I thought it was weird. Well, maybe not entirely weird, because John Kasich echoed some of those things.
Yes.
He said we can't just deport 11.5 million people. I found it interesting that John Kasich continues to argue the sentiment of this. He tries to get to the heart and soul. We can't tear apart families. He's the budget guy. That's his raison d'etre. Mm-hmm. He's the Bush budget guy. Well,
we'll have to talk about that with Arthur Delaney, who'll be on with us next in just a minute. We've got a break for now. You're watching the Huffington Post, obviously, and we'll be right back to talk more about the fourth Republican presidential debate.
We're back, and now we have Arthur Delaney, our friend. Arthur Delaney is here.
The gang's all here.
Yes, it's so nice for you to join us. Zach Carter, as always, still here. Arthur, tonight, right off the bat in this debate, the fight for 15 comes up. Neil Cavuto name checks them. Name checks the protests going around all around the country, and we get into the issue right off the bat of minimum wage. What did you think about the way the candidates responded to that question?
I thought their responses were great. They said yes or no. I mean, they all said no. But it was an excellent, direct, simple question. It caught us up with the day's news, with Andrew Cuomo saying we'll do this for state workers in New York. And he then forced candidates to say whether they would do it. Ben Carson, I think, sort of tried to weasel out of it. But Cavuto put him on the spot. And he said no. And I thought that was very valuable for people to see.
The contention that minimum wage always eternally leads to massive job losses was made by a couple candidates tonight. How does that track with reality?
It's not the craziest thing to say. This is a debate about the minimum wage that we've had since it began to exist in the 1930s. And even supporters of the minimum wage acknowledge that there's a trade-off, and it's a question of magnitude. And I think when you've got a Republican-only debate, they don't really get into that at all.
Because there's no talk about there being costs and benefits that might
they're just saying it ruins jobs and it makes everything worse. So it's not the best venue for looking at the different sides that economists take on that question. But it's not a totally insane position for conservatives to take.
And in terms of what we endured with the last debate, this is a question that, except for maybe Ben Carson, who used to say try to weasel out of it, Republicans think it's fair to answer. They answered it confidently. I think it set a good tone for the debate, maybe not hostile. There was tamped down some of the raw emotions that came bubbling out in the middle of the last debate. But this set a better tone.
I also think
for
those answers
some substance later.
If any of those three guys who came out, like Marco Rubio, Donald Trump, Ben Carson, end up as the nominee, that's an answer that's going to come back to haunt.
Oh, Ben Carson disastrously flip-flopped.
Yeah.
He previously said, I'm for the minimum wage. Today he said he's not. He said every time it's gone up, we've lost jobs, which is not the truest thing. I mean, it went up in 2009. We were in the middle of a giant recession. I don't think anyone considers that a contributor to rising unemployment at the time.
Philosophers really took it on the chin today. Marco Rubio saying that we needed more welders than philosophers.
Yeah, I took that one a little personally.
As it turns out,
as a philosophy major.
You guys are both philosophy majors.
No, I'm an English major. As it turns out,
philosophy majors look down their noses.
English majors and philosophy majors actually do make quite a bit of money in the workplace. So they're very lucrative degrees.
In Saxum, you're employed right now, right?
I even have a job.
You're
talking
working
about ideas.
Yeah.
The median salaries for English majors tend to be higher than business administration majors. And philosophers do better than anyone in the liberal arts.
Yeah.
So
I mean, one thing
we do need welders. There's nothing at all wrong with welders. Welders are boss. Love me a good arc welder.
I mean, one of the things that's odd
wrong
about Rubio's discussion of that, though, is I mean, there was a later discussion about trade policy, and I think Rick Santorum actually in the earlier they called it the undercard debate. But
we're going to talk about the undercard debate, are we?
Kids table.
I mean, they were talking about manufacturing jobs in the United States. Some of them still pay very well. Some of them still pay six figures. Used to be very common to have a inflation-adjusted six-figure job in manufacturing in the United States. And so when people talk about the manufacturing base of the United States being hollowed out by trade or by China, they're not just fetishizing like playing with like power tools, right? They're talking about the fact that good-paying jobs are disappearing and they're not being replaced by better-paying jobs. And for a Fox Business sponsored debate, I thought we had some pretty substantive discussions about the factors behind that, particularly on trade policy. But I don't know if anybody actually cares about that. I don't know if the Republican voters out there saying, TPP is really my top priority right now.
Well, on welders versus philosophers, Rubio's trying to summon this image of effete, liberal, out of touch, Barack Obama faculty lounge. But the president is always going on about the need for more vocational training and community college. So it's sort of a straw man.
Yeah, Marco Rubio said we have to stop stigmatizing vocational schools.
We
and
don't.
I was like, who's been doing that?
No, we don't.
We should find the guy who's been doing that. But I think that's a straw man argument, and I think that he could have really been helped by a philosopher.
Well, they went after philosophers again later on.
Oh yeah, Ted Cruz.
So they went from fiscal to monetary policy.
And this was
philosophers
a gaffe.
Still
taking it out of the chin.
This was a gaffe. I don't think anybody watching really cares about monetary policy. It's this weird thing that like some Republican donors are just really, really stuck up about. So for whatever reason, Republicans feel like they have to make this sound money gold standard argument all the time. Ted Cruz has been doing it. Actually, I thought Rand Paul was a little bit restrained on it tonight. Ted Cruz seemed like the really weird gold bugger,
it was kind
strange
of like,
guy.
Yeah, it was.
Well, Ted Cruz talked about it like they're alchemists or they're witches, and they've got like a cauldron where they conjure up images of what the economy is doing. I was thinking, they just looking at the jobs report on the first Friday of every month, and the last one was good, so like, all right, well, we'll probably be raising interest rates.
Yeah.
It's not mystical.
Let's stick with a little bit with what Rand Paul advocated today. And yes, he wasn't as nearly as hardcore on gold standards, you might suspect, but he did insist that a balanced budget is critical to any tax plan.
There goes $1 trillion. Just
Yeah.
flush $1 trillion.
Why not a
yeah.
balanced budget?
Because you would by doing that, you would ruin a plethora of things that everyone likes and doesn't really want to be destroyed. Yeah, balanced budget, great. Closing all these programs like food stamps, Medicare, Meals on Wheels.
Why not run the government like your household?
Right.
Because
My
you'll
household
destroy the
actually-
economy. Your household doesn't have 300 million people in it. If you
You don't know about my household.
yeah, it's
My
like,
household runs a massive deficit.
Mine does too.
Yeah.
Mine does too. Yeah.
Most do. Most people have debts. I mean, if you own a house, most people who have like mortgages. I mean, you have a
debt, not a deficit.
Also in
Yeah.
Paul's tax plan, this idea that he will do a 1% tax cut to all programs and agencies across the board. Sensible, crazy.
That sounds like the sequester to me.
People generally thought that was crazy, but 1% is smaller than sequester was like 2 or 3%. There was a very substantive debate on taxes between Rand Paul and Marco Rubio. I don't know if you've already talked about this.
No, let's talk about it.
Oh, it was great. It was Rand Paul saying, look, Marco Rubio, your tax plan has a tax credit for people with kids, $2,500. It's going to blow a giant hole in the deficit, or it's going to cost a lot of money. How can you call that conservative?
That's right. Yeah.
And it's a great question. Is that conservative? Not really. But so Rubio was like, well, it's because families are important, which is a conservative idea.
Yeah.
And Rand Paul was basically, no, spending money is not conservative, even if it's for families. And I think he sort of had got Rubio there. So Rubio then said, well, you're an isolationist.
Yeah, right. He did move. And then they had a very substantive
That really did escalate quickly.
But they then had a very substantive conversation about foreign policy, which I thought, look, I agree more with Rand Paul than Marco Rubio on foreign policy, so I admit that I'm more inclined to be impressed by his performance, but I felt like Rand Paul not only acquitted himself, I thought he clearly defeated Rubio at that stage of the debate as well.
Yeah, but however, the substantive debating made for a debate that's much less satisfying to analyze.
Like, wow,
Because
that
who
was really
lost?
interesting.
Who won? I'm really not sure.
So I think Rand Paul had a really great night. But one thing I want to point out about his tete-a-tete with Marco Rubio, Rubio's expansion of the child tax credit does cost money, right? But it's not the biggest driver of debt and deficit in his tax plan. Not even close. The biggest driver of debt and deficit in his tax plan is the massive giveaway to people in the top 1%. The top 1% gets $220,000 a year in tax cuts on average under Marco Rubio's plan. And note that Rand Paul did not go after him for giving away $220,000 a year to rich people.
All their tax plans do the same thing.
That's the thing.
I mean, that's just what's going to happen in a Republican-only debate where they've all got tax plans that blow a giant hole in.
Can I just be honest? In a Republican presidency, you're going to run big deficits. They always do.
Yes.
It's only when they're out of power they talk about the need to cut back on deficits. They get in office, they run big, blown-out budgets.
Cut taxes for rich people, declare a couple of wars.
They do a lot of big government stuff.
Right.
Because they have ambitions too. They have plans too. They want the government to enact these big plans. And so they forsake all this talk about, balancing budgets and that kind of thing. But here's something that I thought personally was maybe the kookiest thing I heard on the stage tonight, and lots of people espoused it, and lots of people in the audience cheered for it, and no one said, "Well, that's crazy." And that is abolishing the Internal Revenue Service. Now, I think
Happened
that
in both debates.
I think the Internal Revenue Service lives in the imagination as a darker, shadowy organization than they are once you start interacting with them in reality. In reality, a well-funded IRS is a great agency. They're one of the best agencies. If you've ever talked to them on the phone, if you've ever had a question, they will shatter the stereotype of the big, bulky, bureaucratic Borg and actually help you. I can say that my interactions with the IRS, all of which I went into thinking, oh, this is going to be awful, turned out great. I got exactly what I needed. They're fantastic. Why abolish the IRS?
Well, they help you sort out the maze of crap
Why?
that they exist to perpetuate.
Why do candidates who say we must
that's
close?
not really
wants to end the IRS.
Why do people
I'm
who
just
say?
saying, it's easy to understand why people hate
Why
the
do people
IRS.
who say, in order to lower tax rates effectively, we have to close loopholes, then in the next breath say, let's also get rid of the agency that tracks down scofflaws?
Look, there's two
Yes.
things going on here. There's two things going on. One, and the most nefarious thing,
They're pro scofflaw.
is that they're pro scofflaw. Yeah,
Okay.
they're actually saying they want to cut enforcement funding so that tax cheats who are, there are low income tax cheats, but overwhelmingly tax cheats that matter for the federal budget deficit, they're rich tax cheats. So they're saying we want to do less. It's a coded way of saying, I want to do less enforcement of tax law for rich people who are cheating the system. You can't just come out of the debate and say, I want to make sure that everybody who's got their shit hidden in some Swiss bank account somewhere is going to get off scot-free against the law. That sounds terrible. But if you just say, I want to abolish the IRS, that sounds a lot better.
Right.
And you're starting from the premise that all taxes are stealing.
Right.
So the IRS is like a crime family
Yes, right.
which is
running a racket.
But there's another thing that's going on, which is
crazy
actually,
because they're actually catching crime families.
but they're also
on
misleading the
regular
voters, okay? Because when Ted Cruz says I'm going to abolish the IRS, he's not saying I'm going to end tax collection and end tax collection procedures. When Mike Huckabee says I'm going to abolish the IRS, that's not what he's saying. What Mike Huckabee is saying is that I'm going to end all taxes on labor and capital and create a much higher sales tax, essentially. And then the agency that's responsible for collecting and sorting through the sales tax will be called something other than the IRS, right? There won't be the same need for the same level of regulations because they'll be simpler, but there will still be a tax agency. It will just have a different name, and it will be dealing with sales taxes instead of income taxes.
call
The
the
power
internal-
of branding.
Yeah.
Internal party balloon provider. I want to talk, all night long on Fox Business Network during the commercial breaks. There's this hilarious anti-Consumer Financial Protection Bureau ad running, and Carly Fiorina, I think, really took that baton and ran with it. She said some stuff about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that was paranoid on the level of Bush ordered Tower 7 to be pulled. Can you take us through this nonsense?
So the like Politburo of loan denials was sort of the ad that was up tonight, where these people are in this room and they're all sitting at these very spaced out desks from like 1950, and there's this giant fascist, communist-looking like banner of Elizabeth Warren.
They all chant 16 tons in unison.
It was an open office plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very.
It's beautiful
Figure.
Bolshevism.
Yeah, it was not. Elizabeth Warren was not happy about this. She tweeted about it. Look, the CFPB is an agency which essentially consolidates all of the previously existing consumer protection regulation authority, which had not been used by the regulators in the run-up to the financial crisis, as evidenced by the subprime mortgage crisis, and it just puts it in one place. And Republicans hate it because it works. The CFPB has, since its inception in 2010, already returned over $10 billion to consumers who have been defrauded.
And they're going after payday lenders,
Right.
Some forms of
Scofflaws.
auto lending.
Yeah,
Get back to
people. I
being
mean, look,
pro-scofflaw.
they've had settlements with American Express. I mean, they've had settlements with payday lenders. Basically, what they do is, if you get ripped off, you can call the CFPB. You don't have to hire a lawyer. You can call the CFPB. They'll take care of shit for you. Get your money back if you've actually been legitimately ripped off.
Fiorina specifically.
Carly Fiorina said they're going through tens of millions of financial records, people's personal financial information.
Yeah.
Look, they do go through banking data like all bank regulators, but
Right.
it is anonymous. They do not know what you bought on your credit card, on Thursday. They have no access to that
This
information.
is not something that she made up out of thin air. It's a sort of a meme of conservative criticism of the CFPB. They're monitoring all your transactions because that's what
Right.
they're supposed to do in order to
See if
root
you
out
got ripped
Do you
off.
know
Yeah.
specifically what you can do with the CFPB? And we talked about this in the podcast. They do get a lot of information about people's personal financial circumstances because they have a way of getting in touch with people. They ask people, if you've been screwed over, tell us your story.
Send us your story.
And we will fix it for you. And they do this repeatedly. So yes, they have actually taken your personal financial information and used it.
Well, when you've turned it over to them voluntarily,
right? Exactly.
so that they can get your money back from that stupid bank that ripped you off. We talked about breaking up the banks tonight. We talked about a lot of financial policy. Fox Business toward the end of the debate talked a lot about too big to fail.
Yes,
it was mostly crazy.
It was a little confusing.
It wasn't Fox Business that was crazy about it, though, was it?
No, it was the Republican candidates. Although I'm kind of sure that I think Jeb Bush may have accidentally made an argument to break up the banks.
Because he says what we need is higher capital requirements, which is the kind of good regulation that you think Democrats.
He said Dodd-Frank has sucked because it didn't raise capital requirements enough on big banks.
It did raise them, yes.
It did raise them, yes. He lied by saying that it did the opposite of
by
not
implying
raising them.
Right.
But Dodd-Frank did raise them, but he said it hadn't raised them enough explicitly. And there are a whole lot of people in the financial reform community who have been saying for a long time that Dodd-Frank has not raised them enough. I mean, Sherrod Brown has a bill which is raise them to the point at which the banks want to voluntarily break up rather than subject themselves to this.
And then he referred to the systemic importance classification, which I think has to do with if your bank is such a disaster that if it went down it would ruin everything.
Yeah.
We have to have a bankruptcy plan.
Right.
I want to say
or actually higher capital requirements.
I want to say tonight, Todd Harris, who's a Rubio campaign advisor, tweeted, "Major donor we've been chasing for 6 weeks just sent a 2-word email to the campaign. I'm in. I wouldn't be surprised if the major donor decided to go with Rubio after he heard Bush wants to capitalize the banks."
I mean, look, just to be clear, go back to that Sherrod Brown point. I mean, Bush was saying repeatedly that we have too much financial concentration in individual banks, so we need to raise capital requirements on them. If the point of that suggests that the point of raising the capital requirements on these banks is to reduce the financial concentration of assets, that means breaking up the banks.
Now,
that's what that means.
There was a straightforward question, which was, would you break up the big banks? And the answers were not as straightforward as they were on the minimum wage. I know Ben Carson was like, well, I would not allow that to happen. You wouldn't allow what to happen? You wouldn't let the bank get big in the first place? Yeah. I would go back in time and not have to answer this question.
I would put a belt buckle on the banks.
And then I would stab
the economy cannot stab them. Yes. Okay, so I want to talk about trade. This is a big embarrassing moment for Trump, who likes to think of himself as a big swinging dick about trade. He gets in over his skis on TPP, and Rand Paul actually gets to fact check Donald Trump on stage. Because Trump was talking about China.
There are two different trade points here, and one was Donald Trump saying, "Oh, we're getting our clocks cleaned on trade. China. And it was connected to the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Yes.
And he was talking as if China was part of that. But
if you listen to his statement here, I hate having to defend Donald Trump.
I
hate having to do this.
Look at you now.
If you listen to his statement, he says China's trying to get in through the back door like they always do. What he means by that is that TPP has a docking clause, which means even the countries that are not currently involved in the deal, if you want to join later, you can dock in to the deal and become part of it. So he was referencing China's previously stated interest in docking into TPP. He still looked really bad, I think, when Rand Paul was like, "Can we just point out that China's not in this deal and you're railing against China?" Look.
He zinged him.
It was a pretty good zinger, and look, the reason that he's talking about China is because China scares people in ways that like Vietnam doesn't and like Malaysia doesn't. Big. Yeah, big, scary, powerful. I mean, there was some crazy shit. I mean, who was it? Was it Rubio who said that he was going to fly Air Force One over the South China Sea to make sure that that was Chris Christie.
That was Chris Christie undercard debate.
He basically said he was going to declare war on China.
We'll get in maybe a little bit about the undercard debate in a bit, but we have to pause for station identification. We will be right back.
We're back. I'm Zach Carter with Huffington Post, joined by, as usual, Jason Linkins, and joining us now, Marina Fang, who you may recognize from the last time we did one of these. Marina, thanks for being with us.
At the Fanger.
So that's
right?
her Twitter handle.
My handle's now at Marina Fang. It's just my name.
Wow, growing up, you can't have that cool, edgy, hip punk name from the first record.
Yeah, gotta up my brand.
Now you're just the replacements, not the impediments. Okay,
Hashtag
so
brand.
let's talk losers. Marina, who lost?
I want to say Ben Carson. I mean, he continues to baffle me. We talked about this last time.
Yes.
He just, most of his answers were like word vomit, just like say random words that sound like things that might be feasible, but they're not.
Yeah, no, I mean, at one point he said that Donald Trump, he kind of accidentally backed himself into saying that Donald Trump's tax plan was more fair than his in the eyes of God. It was really weird.
So weird.
I thought that was very strange. Jason, you have a loser you want to say?
I am not entirely sure that Jeb Bush is ever gonna pull himself out of the hole he's in. I just don't know. It's possible that it's all hype and illusion, and that the steadfast support of the donors he collected at the beginning of this race, when there was no shooting going on, is going to save the day for him. But, I mean, tonight before the debate, his campaign team, who seemed to not understand that when they took the picture of John Kerry windsurfing, it was bad. When they took the picture of Michael Dukakis popping his head out of a tank, it was bad. They took a picture of Bush playing bocce ball before the debate, which is a lot like saying, I'm a fancy French gentleman, Italian gentleman, who enjoys lawn bowling with the fellows before we all drink Amaro. And he just looks stupid. He has got a campaign, I swear to God, that almost unerringly makes him look stupid. This is the most botched campaign since Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign. And not enough people are talking about this. Not enough people are talking about this. I know a few people in this campaign, and they're blowing it. They are Bush's campaign team from his super PAC on down. They are fucking blowing this.
Okay, well, let's keep talking about losers. Marina, so your top loser is Ben Carson because he's just weird.
That and it exposed his weaknesses on policy, or the fact that he doesn't really have any policies. I think, like, people harp on his life story, which is now coming in, under controversy, and now this debate has exposed the fact that he has no real policy proposals.
You're right. He had that one line early where he was like, "Thank you for not asking me about something I said when I was 10 years old."
In the 10th grade.
Yeah, 10th grade, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it was like the only zinger he got in on that the whole night. The rest of the night he didn't have any at least he didn't take advantage of any opportunities to go after the media if he could have.
Right.
I think it's true. But after Ben Carson, who else would you put on that list?
I would agree with Jason that Jeb just, every time his campaign is like, okay, he's going to do better, he's going to fix it, he's going to eat nails, whatever.
You were fiending for an early Jeb exit last time we talked.
This is true.
Yeah, you were straight. I mean, I was too. But, I mean, so here's the thing. I disagree with you guys on this because I think the expectations for Jeb are so low. He had clearly the best debate that he's had to date.
Oh man, that's not saying much.
Yeah,
no, but
just said the standards are pretty low for him.
People go in thinking that he's gonna piss himself in front of everybody, and then when he turns in a pretty good performance, it looks relatively good. Whereas somebody like Trump, who is just slated in debates, shows up and gives a pretty low energy performance. His zingers don't really zing. They boo him when he goes after Carly Fiorina in a really gross and sexist way.
Oh man.
I felt like Trump rhetorically in a lot of ways may have been stronger than Jeb, but he just did not seem like he was. I felt like he had a much better debate and had more to lose and lost it than Jeb had I thought Jeb gained more ground than Trump lost tonight.
Maybe so.
Maybe.
I think. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Tonight was a really difficult debate to get a handle on. Winners, losers. Man,
there were a lot of pretty strong showings, I thought.
Rand Paul
I think
did pretty well.
Rand Paul did very well.
Yeah.
The overall level of the debate tonight was a little bit higher than CNBC, and there wasn't a big stupid row about the media tonight.
That's true.
Of course, there wasn't you know what? I couldn't quite bring myself to say, Ted Cruz, you did a great job. Because he did such a tremendously good job in the last debate.
He said he was going to cut 5 agencies, and he named 4.
Yeah, I mean...
He pulled a Rick Perry.
That's bad, but you have to remember, the stuff he set up in the last debate, he set up antagonism with the media to begin with. Never really got to return to that. He also specifically talked about his role in Washington, how he squares the circle of remaining considered a political outsider when he's got a Washington career.
And that's going to be a problem for almost all of the Republicans in this race who have been Republicans.
He did a good job,
Republicans
though.
and politicians
Never returned to that good stuff.
for most of their lives.
Right.
But we're going to take a break here. I'm Zach Carter, Huffington Post, here with Marina Fang and Jason Linkins. It's still your name, right?
Nah, we're flexible.
And I think we'll be back, but if we're not, don't be mad.
We're gonna be back.
Pretty sure we're
We're
back.
gonna be back. Hey, we're back once again, maybe for the final time, with Lauren Weber and Zach
Always
Carter. I mean, the final time tonight. I mean, we're not being sent off to die in the wilderness.
We're not going to Siberia anytime soon.
No,
It's
no,
okay.
no. We're
Yeah,
fine.
We're
fine.
not going to the CFPB death camps.
No, we are not. Elizabeth Warren is not going to crack the whip over us like that commercial.
So let's bring it all back home. At the end of the last debate, well, when we went to the CNBC debate, one of the things we talked about is when will the winnowing start? When will we finally get some winnowing? And we saw a little bit of migration. Chris Christie and Mike Huckabee dropped from the upper card debate down to the lower card. Lindsey Graham, I know your personal favorite.
I just don't want him to be alone. I don't want him to be alone.
I know you don't. I do
not endorse his policies, but I do endorse the fact that everyone deserves love, including Lindsey.
Including Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Lindsey Graham, he falls off the stage. George Pataki, he falls off. I don't know what you do.
Why was George Pataki on the stage?
I don't know what happens to
Unclear.
you when you fall off the undercard. Do you go into some kind of purgatory where you meet Jim Gilmore?
Who got verified on Twitter.
You just become a football card from like Topps from like 1992.
Your speaking fee goes up like 3 times.
There's some guy named George Pataki who used to be running back for the St. Louis Rams, and you are now that person's like rookie card. That's what happens to you.
So we obviously don't know the criteria of the next debate. Maybe because we just don't know it. Maybe it exists and we don't know it because we're ignorant. But
December 15th is the next debate.
How do you think the debate? What do you think the next debate stage looks like when we reconvene in December?
I don't think it's going to be any different.
Wow.
I mean,
you don't?
No.
No more winnowing.
I don't think there will be any more winnowing because to winnow, they'd have to get rid of Jeb Bush, which I think for pure spectacle's sake, they're never going to do it. I mean, they'd have to make the cutoff.
Right.
Wouldn't you agree?
I also felt like Jeb had his best debate performance of the season
Which
so far.
Which is not saying much, but true.
I agree, but so I think it's very difficult to cut him after his best debate
It's
performance.
so funny because they spent a lot of time decrying welfare programs tonight, but here you are giving them handouts. I know, Lauren. I know you're just saying that because you carry a torch for John Kasich.
We were all clear on this program how much of a torch I carry for John Kasich.
Okay, I definitely think we're done. on the undercard with Bobby Jindal, and we're done with Rick Santorum.
I mean, those guys bit the dust a long time ago.
They now can go to the Grey Havens on the boat.
I think Mike Huckabee can also
Frodo.
go to...
Mike Huckabee's done.
Gandalf.
Mike Huckabee
is.
They can go join the elves.
He's never
Right.
pretended to be in this race. Well, look, he has pretended to, but come on.
He's pretended
Has anyone
pretty
ever
strongly.
really believed that he's not just in this thing to get like more radio listeners and sell more books? Like that is
And
always
get a
been my
better deal when he
assumption.
goes back to Fox.
And he has never ever given me the impression that he really wants to be president. Like that has just never come across in any way. He seems totally psyched to be on stage every night in the losers debate, just being able to say
incredibly
something nasty,
offensive
anti-gay,
things about Janet Yellen, but it's fine. Yeah,
right. I mean,
that's lovely.
he's the thing that's great about running for president as a Republican, and you can see that they don't do this on the Democratic side because there's nobody running. If you don't actually want to be president, you can just run, and let's say you get 1 million supporters, 2 million supporters. Those people buy your stupid, half-baked book. That's a lot of book sales, right? That's a ton of book
Do you
sales.
know
lot
that
of
there are
speaking
Democrats in that
fees.
situation?
Jim Webb.
Sheila Jackson Lee.
Is she running for president right now?
Well, she did.
Is she running for president right now?
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I dreamed that.
Maybe that was a fever dream you
Dennis
had.
Kucinich. Do you think Dennis Kucinich was sincerely running for president?
Dennis Kucinich also, yeah.
I know Mike Gravel probably was because Mike Gravel is weird.
Look,
okay, fair enough.
This thing happens, but at least this year, okay? Look, this year there haven't been any obvious scam artists.
No,
trying to
that's
use
true.
The presidential
Except for Jim
debate.
Gilmore, we don't know. We've never seen him. Him and
That's-
Lincoln Chafee probably sit around.
No, I
Trade-
think
trade
I
books?
think they're both on the up and up. I think they're both on the up and up.
They're both on the
I
up
mean,
and up?
Jim Webb barely had any time or energy to campaign, let alone set up a scam.
And he doesn't need the the presidential campaign to sell books. Like
Right.
he's
already got it.
Quite a good novelist.
He's very good, actually.
So we don't think there's going to be any winnowing at the top.
No,
I don't think so at all.
You think Rand Paul
This is
comes
why I
back?
think that.
Because Rand Paul actually had a good debate.
This is why I have my contrarian account of Rubio losing this debate, which is that he needed to knock out some of these other establishment guys. He needed to get Kasich out of there.
And he didn't.
And he didn't. And even for Christ's sake, I mean, Rand Paul looks great. I don't think they can
Rand
kick
Paul
him
had his
out of
best
this
debate
one.
yet.
He was terrific. I think he was clearly the rhetorical winner of this debate. Whether that matters to anybody is irrelevant.
Well,
and also, what have the winners of the debates done so far? Donald Trump won the first one. He's allegedly maybe going down after this debate, we hope.
yeah.
Rubio won the second one, or the third one, and Carly Fiorina won the second one. It didn't really do her any good in the polls.
Sure.
So what does it mean to win the debate?
One thing I will say is I feel like we won tonight debate coverage, but Jeff Young, come here for a second. Would you say that we did a good job tonight?
I thought you'd never ask. It's debatable.
Oh, well. Thanks, Jeff Young. Thanks to Jeff Young, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff Young, you probably have a lot to say tomorrow morning about how Obamacare's worked in the past.
Jeff's our healthcare reporter. He's really good, but he
He's
also
great.
makes dad joke puns, and
But they're kind of great, so
They were
It was
kind of
really
great.
good.
They're kinda great.
It was really good, and it made me really happy. Miss
So-
you, Jeff.
So just so you know, we will be back for further adventures at debate night. We are not going to be live streaming this Saturday night for the Democratic debate because it's Saturday and we all deserve a little time off. So there will be
do
some
you.
Huffington Post
So
coverage.
do you.
Your team will be there, but we will be spelling some of the people who work so hard to cover these debates. We'll be back, however, for the next Republican debate. For everyone at the Huffington Post, Zach Carter, what?
If you want more information, more debate analysis, check out the So That Happened podcast. It's available on iTunes and Stitcher.
Yes, and listen to Lauren Weber's The Morning Email, which
thanks,
is
Jason.
both a newsletter and something that brings the lovely timbre of her voice to you every morning. So for Zach, Lauren, myself, and everyone here, have a good night. Love you all.